Welcome, y'all! Woo-hoo! Buddy, this is the Pregame Engineer Tailgate Mayor podcast for Sunday. What in the heck are we doing on Sunday, Sheriwn? June 28th, 2015. I am Tailgate Mayor Rusty Wallace. I'm joined by Pregame Engineer Andrew Sheriwn. What's happening, Sheriwn?
Hey, man, sometimes the schedule, it just determines when you're going to do the thing.
Yeah, I hear you. So as you recall, on the last podcast, I was broadcasting from Jerusalem. I think a day or two after that, you were straight off on a plane to where in the world did you go?
I went to Mexico City. I knew we were kind of on call to try to do one, at least, a 5 or 10 minute deal from there, but it didn't work out because our meetings went late.
Yeah, and then came back here and straight to Alabama late in the week for me, and then back in Atlanta today. And in 12 hours, I'm jumping on a plane and going to Washington, D.C. So what a mess, but at least I'm always bringing my microphone with me, always ready to have a pop-up podcast if we need to. So, but we're back. We're in the saddle. We haven't quit on this thing yet.
No, that's a good point. We're not going to quit on it. And it's funny.
That's for sure.
You're back in the air in 12 hours. I'm getting on a plane about 4 o'clock tomorrow and headed to Milwaukee.
Oh man. So, we'll both be out and about and then back ready for it again Thursday, Friday of this coming week. So I land back on Thursday. So maybe Thursday night we can pull something off. When do you get back?
I'm headed back Wednesday evening.
Okay. So yeah, we got plenty of time. So y'all look forward to that and look forward to this one. We've got a great lineup here today. What you drinking on, Sheriwn?
I got a little Jim Beam White Label and my dad's favorite Red Rock Ginger Ale.
All right. Shout out to Don there. Hey, Don, we heard you're listening. Really appreciate you. And a few other new fans we need to shout out to. Of course, our old fans, our existing fans, we love you. But as we always say, we'd love to call out anybody who's listening. Hey, Hank is starting listening. Appreciate you, Hank. Larry, my father-in-law, has started listening to us, said he's caught up. So that's really cool. And Debbie, tell us about Debbie. She's on.
Oh, yeah. Debbie is a great friend of mine, a mentor from the old days, fresh out of college, needed a mentor. She's out in Seattle. She has been very appreciative of our chemistry. So hopefully we can keep that going.
Excellent. Well, I think we appreciate them even more. So hope they continue listening and, send us in. Hey, if you're listening and you want to be shout out on the podcast, let us know. We're glad to give you that shout out. Finishing up the thought there. So I've got a new offering from Jim Beam called Jim Beam Bonded. And I had to go look up what that meant, a bonded liquor. Apparently back in the old days, they used to cut the stuff with all kinds of mess. And so the U.S. government came up with some sort of regulation whereby they will monitor the progress of a liquor, and then they will certify it as bonded. In other words, the government's certifying that you're getting in this drink exactly what the distiller says you're getting. So it has to be 100 proof. So this is 100 proof. It has to be aged for 4 years, and it has to come from, I think, one distilling session. So it's not exactly like a single malt necessarily, not single barrel, but single session of some sort. I'm not 100% sure what all that means, but hey, it's not too bad. It's got a little bit of sweetness to it.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So, you learn a little history lesson. It's fun just to go in, you see that in the liquor store, you say, I got to have that, I guess, and then go look up about it. So getting us kicked off, our first and one of our favorite topics as usual, the mistakes we've made over the last week or week and a half as it is at this point. So Sheriwn, you actually caught me on one and I just kept rolling. I was straight up out of Animal House there. I was rolling. The Germans are bombing Pearl Harbor. I had said something about find us on Facebook and you'd said, Twitter, actually we're not on Facebook yet. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. So I will call out that, I did not. I did not say it correctly. We're not on Facebook quite yet. That's maybe a couple more followers and we'll be there. Then, I did talk about beer over in Israel, and I won't call this a mistake necessarily as much as I couldn't remember what I was drinking on over there. Two main breweries in Israel. One of them's called Tempo, and they make Gold Star. I said I was drinking something called Star something, and Gold Star's fine. It's like Budweiser or something. So nothing special there. But the one to talk about from Israel Beer, well, if I can say it, Israel Beer Breweries. It's called Tuborg. It's kind of a red ale, and it's just one of their drinking beers over there. Really good stuff. Pretty much find it everywhere. And on top of that, if you're a beer fan, the craft beer scene in that area is pretty cool. We would go to places, and I would ask him, all right, what you got? And he'll, without fail, and I'm not going to try to do an Israeli accent because that's going to come off real bad, but without fail, he would say, well, we have Gold Star, we have Tuborg, we have Heineken, Amstel Light. I was like, come on, do something else. He'd look over his shoulder to his left, look over his shoulder to his right, and go, okay, listen, my cousin brews a beer down in his basement, and he slaps this label on it, and I've got a couple in the back. You want to try one of them? I'll just charge you for a Tuborg. And I'm telling you, that happened 3 or 4 times, whether his cousin, brother, himself, his wife, whatever. So really cool scene going on there right now, and you feel kind of like an insider there. And then on top of that, the beers that they do brew, they're just a little bit different. So they'll call it an IPA, but they have available spices and hops and stuff that, we don't necessarily have here. So everything's just a little bit different. But, I can go on and on about beer, but, maybe a couple little history lessons or some learning here on the PETM podcast between the Jim Beam Bonded and the Israeli beers.
No, that's really cool. Both Rusty and I are very fond of local beer, and at least trying out what the local scene has to offer, because that's part of the culture, and that makes it fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how about you, Sheriwn? Any mistakes you need to atone for this week?
Sure. As being the sort of the de facto scientist for what's going on with the new package that's going on at Kentucky, the test we talked about, it was going to be a full race, and how excited we are that they're going to do 43 cars running 400 miles, testing a package. Since there's been no testing this year, one of the things I missed in my research was, I think I said that the splitter was actually going to be extended, and that's actually incorrect. The splitter is going to be reduced. We're going to be reduced from what it is today, which is an overhang of 2 inches, all the way down to 1/4 of an inch. And also there's another added piece to it, is that the radiator pan, which cuts the air from going underneath the car, is going to be reduced from 38 inches to 25 inches. And what that results in the combination with the spoiler height reduction, is an overall reduction of 30% of downforce.
Oh, wow.
So that's going to be pretty fun.
Yeah. That actually sounds really awesome. So just Kentucky, right? And that's one of our 1.5-milers.
Yeah, it's just Kentucky for now. I think NASCAR is very excited for this package. I think they believe that it's going to be enough positive reaction to it that they'll get to use it again. I thought it was very interesting that one of the IndyCar racers mentioned after the race yesterday afternoon or evening, after the race at California, that the NASCAR drivers were asking for less downforce, and that the IndyCar package tends to add downforce. And there was maybe some consternation over what pack racing or what the package they have for IndyCar does when you race at a place like California. And there's a safety factor involved that has upset some of the drivers that were involved in that race.
Yeah. So, any other, or actually, what I wanted to ask, what are the drivers' reactions to it? Have they come out and said anything, or are they pretty mum right now?
Well, Will Power, who we know from Loud and Lore,
double bird,
and the double middle fingers to the competition booth. He was one of the vocal people about how, I'm pretty sure I just quoted him without quoting him, about NASCAR wanting downforce and IndyCar adding downforce, and whether or not that is actually good for racing and what impacts it has to safety. if we circle back now, I'm circling you back to things that I screwed up, mistakes we made. I tried to emulate my best Bill Burr off mic opportunities, and they were pathetic at best. So while I would say if you like no holds barred comedy, you should definitely follow at Bill Burr because he does it better than me, and I won't be trying to imitate him in the future because it was really bad.
He's got that native Boston accent that really works with the off mic where he can kind of go way off and ladies and I'm going to do it terrible now just to make you feel okay. But yeah, it's that's something that is tough to emulate for sure. But yeah, like you said, that's a podcast you and I both follow pretty religiously in terms of once it comes out, we're listening, and always a good time there. If you know who Bill Burr is, then you probably know the type of material that he's going through. If you don't, it's a little bit more adult themed than perhaps our podcast, but we will certainly endorse it for those of you who would like to listen to that. So that gets us to, so we've been closing out the show the last few weeks with Women's World Cup, and being a NASCAR podcast, we've been looking for the crossover somewhere, and we got it. I think it was during the truck race or during the Xfinity race. I think it was a truck race because we didn't get to see the Xfinity race. We'll talk about that in a bit. There was a commercial, and it was a promotion for the Women's World Cup, and it had Clint Boyer, Danica Patrick, a few other drivers I don't remember, holding up the flag or the logo or whatever for the Women's World Cup. Thought that was really cool that NASCAR got into the cross promotion there, and that they were able to get some folks. And on top of that, of course, our ladies have won their division, not division, their group in the group stage. Went off and played in the last. Was there 2 elimination matches at this point?
Yes.
Yeah. So we just beat China. And just before that, we beat, and you're going to have to help me out. I've already lost it. And I watched Colombia. I watched every second of it. Yep. So yeah, it's really cool.
No, it's great. It largely due in part to the fact that Fox has won the bid for the Women's World Cup, and of course Fox has a big role in broadcasting NASCAR. And yeah, it was Clint and it was Jeff Gordon and a couple other guys that showed up their jerseys in commercials during NASCAR. I thought it was a great cross promotional opportunity to maybe offer the NASCAR community a chance to get some national pride going, because you know what, even if you don't like the game that's being played, why not root for the United States of America?
Yes, by God and all the disciples. We what's next up? Now, at this point, we are deep into the elimination rounds. Semifinals coming up. We have semifinal match, and this one we're going to need everybody to start jumping in onto this. If you're a bandwagoneer, now's the time, because we got some tough opponents ahead. We outranked our other opponents quite a bit. I would say we got by them, but not in a dominating fashion that you might expect based on the ranking differences. But we did get by them, and we're going to have to step up for these next games.
Yeah, well, we got Germany coming up, and the world rankings put Germany at number 1 and the United States number 2. So it's an interesting match in a semifinal, in that you have what is perceived to be the 2 best teams in the world are actually going to go head-to-head in a semifinal match. Mm-hmm. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. We're going to get Megan Rapinoe and Lauren Holiday back, but we played really well against China without them. So it's an exciting deal.
When's the next match?
It's going to be Tuesday evening. I think the kick's going to go off at 7 Eastern. It's going to be a challenge for me because I'm going to be in the Central Time Zone with afternoon meetings for business and whatnot. So hopefully I can find a fun place to park myself at 6 o'clock Central Time to root on United States of America.
Awesome. So in DC, well, I'm actually in Silver Spring, Maryland, about 15 miles north of DC. There's an Irish pub there that I know is going to have the match on. It's my favorite place in Silver Spring. So looking forward to that. I will definitely be there watching the match. Well, Sheriwn, that gets us to I would say, an unexpected topic for this week. And I'll open it by saying Brad Keselowski, Kyle Busch, Trevor Bayne, Kyle Larson, and now Kasey Kahne, all within the last few months or whatever, have announced the pregnancies of their significant others. Kasey came as a surprise. So is there something in the water? What's going on?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think for me, I'm not going to go political, and I'm not going to go social in terms of point of view. And it's interesting to me that you have so many of these guys that are going to be impending fathers or already fathers that are not married to their significant other. I think Kasey might be, like, his significant other might be the most hidden from everybody. I don't think anybody knows who Sam Sheets is. She's kind of off the radar.
Yeah, I know he loves to keep his private life private, and I respect him for that. Then again, you go look online and try to find anything about, who this person is, who his family is and all that at this point. And you don't see Sam Sheets anywhere. I think there was the last one that we saw, Michelle, what's her name, was his girlfriend for a while, and they aren't together, and then suddenly he's going to be a dad. It was like, whoa, what's going on? So what do you think that's going to do to him? When I'm talking about these other guys, Brad Keselowski, Kyle Busch, I mean, we know the maturity, I think, that has come with that. Trevor Bayne, I mean, he's not exactly front runner in the first place. Kyle Larson, rookie of the year sort of guy with, just chasing after that elusive first win. So where do you think that puts Kasey?
Well, that's good. That's a good question. I think it would be remiss of me to not say the same things about Kasey that I've said about Kyle, and I've said about some of these other guys that being a family man and being a father, it certainly changes you. We've seen the impact that it's had on Kevin Harvick. It's probably been as big on Kevin as anyone. Of course, he's been married for a long time, so that's kind of a different deal. But I would say that this is going to be an enlightening factor to his life. I think it's going to have a sobering effect on him in that, and we know that as fans that Kasey's really hard on himself when he doesn't perform as well as he think his car should, or he doesn't perform as well as he think he should as a driver. And I think maybe this may be the thing that brings it all together, that lets him, when he leaves the racetrack, just go, you know what, all right, we didn't have a good day, or we had a great day, etc. And if you've listened in the last 5 to 10 races with Keith Rodden back on the box, Keith is a father and speaks very highly of Kasey as a potential father because of the way he's treated Keith's children and the way Kasey's treated his siblings' children. And it just seems like positive all the way around to me.
Yeah. So we'll see if and when there's a big wedding date planned. I think, was it Brad Keselowski who had held out by quite a bit there, or maybe he was. I can't remember. So we'll see if there's maybe in the off season there'll be a big wedding deal or something. Yeah,
Brad. It doesn't seem to have any plans to get married, but is very excited about Paige White delivering their baby and all that stuff. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right, Sheriwn. Well, I think it's time for, I would say it's our first serious topic on the podcast here. I think we like to keep it, you and I keep it pretty light when we're together, even when it comes to serious stuff. But this whole Confederate flag thing, and it's made its way into NASCAR, and it's something I don't ever intend to talk politics on here, or intend to talk, all the things that you're supposed to keep away from, politics, religion, etc. But I think now that the flag issue has come into NASCAR, I think it's important to hear as many voices on it as we can, and some level-headed stuff. We've heard Dale Earnhardt Jr. talk about it and saying pretty much he's all for NASCAR's position on it, and he doesn't like the flag whatsoever. You hear all the people talking about it being a heritage symbol, and that people are trying to take away that. So a lot of stuff on either side, and I'll give you my take on it. And, this is when we put on the serious hat. As you've seen on the podcast, and as you'll continue seeing as I travel more, I've traveled all over the world, north, south. I've gone to the Far East. I've been in Japan for a few weeks. I've been to Israel recently. Go up to New York a lot. Love going to New York. I enjoy going to D.C. I enjoy, as the vacations that I take me to crazy exotic places. And every time, though, you come back, you land at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in Atlanta. You get in the cab or get on MARTA or whatever, and as you're coming in, you're seeing all the trees, seeing all the stuff, and you know what I think is, boy, this is home right here. This is great, and I really love. I love being in the South. I love being in Atlanta, and I don't think I could leave here. I've had job opportunities that have popped up in places that are north or northwest or other areas, but this is where I feel like I'm rooted and where I belong. And really, like I said, every time I come back, I think this is home. And just the heritage here and the culture here, it's like I say, I go to New York and D.C. a lot. You come back home and everything just slows down a little bit. You get to lean back, you get to breathe, take your time. You get to have a glass of sweet tea or a glass of bourbon, whatever you're feeling that day. And it's just such a great lifestyle, and it's a heritage to be celebrated. I think that's something missing in a lot of this, is that we shouldn't say that the South is not something to celebrate. What we have here is unique, and it's really cool, and I think it's great. That said, I don't need a symbol that is offensive and has been used and has been enacted to be offensive in order to celebrate that heritage. I don't need a flag to do that. I need to just be here, and I need to talk with the people and listen to a good Southern accent, and I don't need the flag for that. So as far as I'm concerned, retire the thing. Get rid of it. I don't care. That does not ruin any of my heritage. It does not take any of that away. I have a lineage of Southerners that have preceded me in my family, generals in the Civil War, all kinds of stuff. But yeah, I don't need a flag to celebrate that. The flag can go into the museums, into the history books, and besides that, let's find another way to celebrate our heritage and our culture that doesn't have the undertones that a symbol like that flag does. And I'm fine taking it away. And as you know, we go to when we go to the race in Atlanta and we have a big flagpole, I don't think we've ever flown that flag, because we have other unique flags that are fun to fly. Of course, the American flag, but we also have my favorite flag, the Gadsden flag, the "Don't Tread on Me with the Snake." I think that one's really cool. That's Revolutionary War side too. So that's also just celebrating America. That's as American as I'm not going to say as American as the American flag. It's not flying above it or anything, but it's a really cool flag. Sparks a lot of conversation too. People come up and want to talk about it. So that's my stance. Get rid of it. I'm done with it. I don't need it anymore. It's a symbol of hatred and bigotry that's been used as that for over the last 50 years or so, and we don't need it. So there we go. There's my rant. There's my soapbox. There's my seriousness. So Sheriwn, you're up.
Yeah. So no, that's great commentary. Yeah. All right. So I'll just say where I'm at with it is, and I think I posted this on Twitter earlier, is if heritage is your argument, there are way more flags and symbols that you can fly to celebrate heritage that don't include the symbol that invokes a feeling of hatred amongst a particular set of people. So And as a person who has a lot of history with both Revolutionary War fighters and Civil War fighters in my family, I can't speak to what Ryan McGee talked about yesterday on ESPN Radio because my family history is poor. It is what it is. So there was fighters, but there was never slave owners. But and growing up in the South, you see these symbols, and the thing that you need to realize is that when you're a young cat, you're a teenager in your early 20s, and you don't necessarily understand what it is that those symbols mean to people, the ones that get bothered by it. There's so many flags and so many symbols you can use to celebrate being a Southerner that don't invoke the kind of hatred that the Southern Cross, the X, the battle flag invokes. And so when you have that many options, there's no reason to get upset about the fact that this one thing is the thing that bothers people. So why not remove that thing, from your vernacular, from your life, from public display, and why not use the things that don't invoke that kind of feeling in people? Because why would you ever want to display a flag that upsets people? Like, there's no reason for that.
Yeah. And you can't put the victim as the perpetrator at that point either, saying that it's their fault they're getting offended by it. Well, in a lot of ways, that flag came to prominence when civil rights issues were at their hottest and at the most contested. So yeah, I think you bring up an important point too, which is that a lot of the teenagers / early 20s / we were there. We were that age where you want to do something that gets you attention. So it gets you, you're going to put the flag up and haha, look at me, I've got this flag up and all that. But as mature adults, we know better at this point. So I'm retiring it. I'm done. Not retire. I don't think I've flown it in a long time anyway, if ever flying that one. But it's beyond being a joke, I guess, is what I mean by that. It's not even a joke anymore. It's not a look at me for attention. It's now at a point where it's just retired. I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the quotation I'm sticking with on this talking point is perspective paints a very vivid picture of the past. Mm-hmm. And it takes a little age and a little wisdom to understand perspective. And when you do, you realize that regardless of what you think and what you want, humans evolve. There's an evolution involved in being a human being if you're a productive human being. And you understand that at some point there are certain symbols and certain things that you should talk about and you shouldn't display. And I'm happy that South Carolina is making the decision they are. I would hope that more people would make the same decision, especially in Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi and Tennessee. And let's not get caught up in the fact that there's somebody trying to say, oh, you can't fly a flag. Well, that's not it. The idea is that you need to understand human decency. And let's figure out a way to celebrate the heritage of being Southern without displaying something that there are Southern people who find that offensive, because the South has more black people than anywhere else other than Africa.
That's a great point too. I really like how you are saying, yeah, the heritage includes black folks in the South, and that needs to be celebrated too. And you're offending half the South by celebrating the South. Mind blown. I don't get it. So yeah. Well, let's move on. I think we've nailed that one. I feel really good about what you've said. I'm happy with what I've got to say on it, and I will stick to it. Let's move to trucks. So it has been a little while since you and I talked, and so there's been 2 weekends of racing. there wasn't a NASCAR or a NASCAR. There wasn't a Cup race last week. There was NASCAR races, trucks and Xfinity. I won't go too far into this, but trucks were at Iowa. Iowa, we talked about it last time, a fun speedway, something that the Cup doesn't run at, so you get to see something a little different. I really enjoyed the race. I picked Matt Crafton, finished 4th. You picked Cole Custer, finished 9th. I think we did pretty good there. And Eric Jones takes a checkered.
Yeah, well, I don't know where we're going to lead into the next couple of races, but, Eric won the K&N East Series race at Berlin, which is somewhere in the middle of Michigan. And then they went up to Iowa, and then Eric won there. And then let's lead right into the night race at Chicagoland, and Eric won again. So he had a pretty epic weekend for any racer. The fact that he's so young, and there's been a lot of things said about Eric in that, he's very reflective of what Cowboys used to be, in that when things don't go his way, he's reluctant to talk. He's quick to walk away. But when he does win, he has a lot to say. He's very eloquent, and he's very young. So we have to, the cautionary tale there is, do you remember when you were 17, 18, 19 years old and how you reacted to stuff? And were you ever on a professional level? Most likely anybody that's listening, and certainly us conducting this podcast, we were never on a professional level at that age. And so let's be real careful how hard we judge a guy that is his whole life is performance, because he just won the week.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I'm sitting here thinking on my own, where was I at 17, 18, 19? I'm thinking, well, I'm glad that I wasn't on camera for that. And for that matter, as you and I have talked before, I wasn't on Facebook, didn't exist, wasn't on Twitter, et cetera, for that history to be shown, where his history is very public from right now, and he's having to do his best to not be immature on that. So I think it's kudos to him for that. And he's had some tough few weeks leading up to this. I mean, he's been trying to get the win. I can't remember the exact history, but we were watching it. There were a few races there where he was, the bridesmaid, not the bride, several weeks in a row, and he's had a tough journey. So kudos to him. I'm glad for him.
Yeah. Well, he got outdrafted by Casey at Charlotte.
I think I was celebrating that win too hard to remember that.
Right. Well,
so and that was after that caution that happened that brought the field together, and then Casey was able to make that pass because he was out.
Correct. If that had gone green, Eric would have won by a landslide.
Yeah.
And then you go a couple races later, and he catches a hard deal out of turn 4 and gets turned and wrecked, and of course he's upset then. But the bottom line is, this kid can race. The interesting commentary for me coming out of this whole deal is how good he is what is Joe Gibbs going to do? This is a Joe Gibbs development driver. Mm-hmm. Joe Gibbs has got 4 drivers.
Yeah.
So what are they going to do with him?
Well, get him to win a Xfinity Series trophy, and see from there. Who knows? With all the free agents and off-season stuff that we saw this last year, you never know where he's going to make some room.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, everybody was nervous, and I think we were probably as nervous as anybody as Cup fans, that as well as Chase Elliott was doing. It's like, oh, shoot, what's going to happen? You got Jeff Gordon, you got Jimmy Johnson, you got Dale Jr., those guys don't seem to be going anywhere. Casey's contract's up, and then he signs a contract. And like, okay, well, what's that going to mean for Chase? Now Jeff Gordon has announced his retirement. He wants to hang out with his kids and do some Fox stuff in the booth, which is going to be great.
Yep.
But I don't see the same path for Eric within the Joe Gibbs fold, because Kansas isn't anywhere near done. And the other guys are all young.
Yeah. We'll see. Speaking of that Xfinity race, I think calling it out on a podcast, getting as many ears on this as possible. I saw it all over Twitter too, and I'm glad I did. That we had the rain out, and rain happens. We talked about it last week. I'm not going to say I'm glad it rained out, but I'm glad that we talked about how we respect NASCAR, and when they say we've lost the track, we respect and understand that. And they said, we lost the track. We just cannot do it. It rained the rest of the night. They weren't going to have that race. So they scheduled it for the next day. Me and you were both excited. All right, we got something to watch, something to do. And what happens? They put it on Fox Sports 2, FS2. And here we are in Atlanta, where you and I both have Xfinity service. And the Xfinity race is being broadcast on Fox Sports 2. And Xfinity doesn't carry that channel. So that was a total question mark in my mind going, how can you not carry that channel, at least even for that day, turn it on for everybody, or I guess it doesn't work that way. I work in that industry, so I know better, but at least figure something out there. You cannot have your namesake series not be broadcast on your namesake network.
Yeah, I don't understand that. It's been a very frustrating point for me ever since Speed became Fox Sports 1, and we, as Atlanta area Comcast Xfinity subscribers, we haven't had an opportunity to see any of the content that's been on Fox Sports 2. It's very strange to me. I don't understand the politics involved with that. Evidently there are some, because otherwise we would have it. The fact that I spend a lot of dollars, and I actually get every channel that Xfinity Comcast offers outside some of their premium channels. I get some of the premium channels, but I subscribe to every single channel that they offer that is cable television, but I don't get that. And it is very strange to me, the strategy they would employ, where they are the title sponsor of a series, yet there are customers of theirs that don't have access to some of those broadcasts.
Yeah. It's baffling. So this is our call out to Xfinity, to Comcast, to all our fans. Get on the phones. Get them offering for Fox Sports 2 here in Atlanta so we can watch those. Well, let's move on to Sonoma. Sonoma happened a few hours ago. We're doing this on Sunday night. And you and I had actually texted beforehand because we knew we weren't going to be able to do the podcast before the race. So you had picked Clint Boyer. I picked Casey Kane, and I would say that's probably our best yet. Maybe we need to start keeping up with that. But in terms of results, Clint Boyer fourth, and he was running, side by side on the last restarts with Jimmy Johnson, and Casey Kane just sort of making his way up through it all day. Excuse me. And then, of course, Kyle Busch winning. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago, where Kyle Busch needed that win in the Xfinity Series to sort of bring himself back and really think about where he's at and get that win under his belt so he can get his confidence back and everything. Now he's got it in Cup. He's got the win, but that also means he's that much closer to being in the race for the championship here. So not only getting his confidence back, but hey, you got to switch gears even more so, or even put that more toward it, and look at being a championship team this year. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I don't know where he stands in the points right now. I think it's very cool for him to get a win. I think it was very cool how excited his older brother was for him.
Yeah, that was neat.
That win, and I think it's very good for his confidence to be able to get that win. But I will say, in the dying hour of Larry McReynolds'
his final broadcast there.
Yeah. Sorry, I kind of faded off there. In Larry McReynolds' final broadcast, he said something that made a lot of sense. He said, "You know what? Kyle Busch is probably not going to make the chase, but one thing they can do as a team to build structure within the team is to win races. And if they win races, they'll get that team right. And when they come back next year, they'll have a very good foundation to build on.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a photo finish on whether he makes a chase or not. At this point, I think they said he needed to average 13th throughout the rest of the 10 races that are left, or 11 counting this one. And it, this just made that average even a little easier. Maybe he only has to do 15th at this point average. So probably not like that, probably more like 13th and a half or something. But I think he's got a chance. We'll see. A couple top fives mixed in with a couple 20th places, and he's in, So I think it'll be close.
Certainly, now that he's got the win, that's the hardest thing to do. He had to average, when he got back into his car, a 15th place finish, based on the way people were running in order to make the chase. His average over that series of races was 18th over his career. So I never thought that he would be capable of actually getting in. So we'll see how it goes. I think it's just fun to see the guy get a win and sort of resurrect the confidence that you need to perform at this level. It really is just good for the sport.
Yeah, and not just good for the sport, but good for the drama. We'll now have the drama of, will he be able to make that? That'll be just on top of all the bubble guys. And so I think it'll be a great storyline to follow over the next 10, 12 weeks. One thing I noticed at Sonoma, by the way, I felt like, and maybe I'm just not remembering the other races or whatever, but these guys are getting airborne, I felt like, more than I had seen before. Am I going crazy, or did you notice that at all? They were hitting maybe they're just finding new lines. I don't know if Sonoma did something, but every corner on every lap seemed to be, every guy has two wheels off the ground. I don't know if they're just racing it harder, if it's a product of the car or what, but I thought it was really neat to see. But it felt like there was sometimes guys would come off of that, go down the straightaway, and I'm telling you, there was 50 to 100 feet where they still had two tires in the air.
Well, not to totally contradict you,
I may be wrong.
I believe that the platform they're racing on now has caused more of that, because the frame is closer to the ground. But DW talked about it on Friday during practice, that there are two corners in particular where if you don't hit the curb hard enough to get the right side off the ground, the car won't turn enough. And so it's like you're super de-wedging the car when you hit that. You know what I mean? Like you're putting it all the way to that car on that left side to get those tires to grip. I think I really believe that if you look back, that ever since we've gone to this car tomorrow, that kind of airborne phenomenon has been happening. But I believe as they get faster and faster and faster, and as they've relinquished the rule that you have to have a ride height, I believe that you've had to pick the car up in several corners to turn, because the body is so close to the ground.
Yeah.
That unless you upset it a little bit, that you won't get the camber and de-wedge that you need to actually turn the car.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I wanted to bring that up as just a thing that I felt like I noticed. Again, I'll probably say it again next year and just not remember that I'd already said it. But it's I thought that was fun. So let's close it out, man. Next week, 4th of July, and we've got Daytona Sunday night. So I think it'll be a good time for us to talk about next week, talking about what all our thoughts are on the whole deal with the what do we call it, the plate tracks and everything. And maybe we can do this on Thursday night or something, and we'll make our picks then. What do you think?
Yeah, now we should be able to do another podcast before the race happens, but Junior said it best. He's like, "Oh, we're going to race on Sunday night. That's different."
Yeah.
We hadn't done that before.
Yeah, always candid with that response. So looking forward to our next one. Looking forward to that. And we'll talk about Daytona then. I was going to talk about it here, and I even have my pick ready, and I'm going to keep my pick, but I'm going to hold it to my vest because it had just occurred to me that, yeah, we'll be able to talk about it then. So what else, Sheriwn? What's next?
Well, I mean, obviously we already visited the U.S. Women's National Team. I'm super excited about that on Tuesday night against Germany. And then I think if we're able to get past Germany, I believe we're going to play on Saturday or Sunday night. So hopefully we won't go head-to-head with the Daytona or the Coke Zero 400.
Coke Zero also.
Recall fans that one of the reasons why they're doing it on Sunday night, and people are upset that that would be hard for fans to get to because they got to go back to work on Monday.
Yeah.
The stands have been greatly reduced as they build this Daytona Tower of Power, or whatever they're calling it. The stands are only going to hold about 50,000 for that night, whereas traditionally Daytona has held, I think, 125. So hopefully it'll be a packed race. Hopefully it'll be a good race. Obviously, I hope we can avoid weather. Weather's always been an issue at Daytona in July. A Sunday night race is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, looking forward to it. So, and I'm looking forward to this podcast next week. Hey, so that'll wrap us up. You can find us on Twitter, actually, not even Facebook yet, but Twitter at PETM Podcast. And I'm Tailgate Mayor at Tailgate Mayor. And Sheriwn, tell them yours.
Pre-game engineer, it's at capital P-R-E, capital G-A-M-E, capital E-N-G-N-R. It's a very strange abbreviation, but it works.
It does work. So we'll catch y'all hopefully later this week. Sheriwn, we'll talk to you then.